Welcome to the Indie KidLit podcast. Join Marti Dumas and Elena Page on their quest to help children's and middle grade authors find the right audience and sell more books. Hi, and welcome to the Indie KidLit podcast. I'm Marti Dumas.
And I'm Elena Page.
And we are joined today by a wonderful guest named Beau Blackwell. Beau Blackwell is the author of several children's books, including The Knight Who Wouldn't Sleep, which is adorable, by the way, The Morning Grumblies, a book about waking up grumpy, and Natasha the Ninja Princess, which is just like screaming for a child to ask to download that one. That's an excellent title. He also manages an online mastermind that connects children's book authors and has a children's book course for would-be children's book authors. And as if all of that is not enough, Beau is also widely considered to be a small business internet marketing guru. And welcome, Beau, and we hope you are ready to let us pick your brain.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and chat with you guys. So yeah, pick away.
All right, very cool. Well, let's get started. What got you into children's books in the first place?
Honestly, I started writing them for my own kids. I didn't have any idea that it was something I would do someday or really wanted to do, but I had recently left the corporate world and gone out on my own to start my own business. And so I was working from home and had a lot of time. And I had just dropped my kids off at school one morning, and like on the way home started getting an idea for some rhymes, and it was related to my son not wanting to go to bed at night and staying up, as I'm sure many parents can associate with. And so I basically got home and sat down and started writing out these rhymes, and honestly within about an hour or an hour and a half I had the whole book kind of written. I went back and edited it and tweaked it a little bit, but kind of just ran with it and was like, whoa, I have a book. I should figure out how to get this illustrated. And I didn't really, to be honest, like the company I'd come from worked all with entrepreneurs and people that were trying to start their own businesses and do their own thing. And so honestly, it never really even crossed my mind to try to go the traditional publishing route. I knew right away that I wanted to self-publish and just get it out there. You know, I was mostly doing it just as a way to have something that I could share with my kids anyway. So I wasn't concerned with, you know, getting a big book deal or that kind of thing. And so at that point I was like, wow, I've got to figure out how to get an illustrator and how to get this thing up on Kindle and get a paperback version of it and everything. And so I had to figure all that out from scratch. And so that kind of started the whole process. And by the time I got my first book finished and back and then published on Kindle, I'd already written 2 more. And so and it was kind of like just kept rolling out new ones as I came up with them. So
that's great. So that sounds like a very like personal start. I feel like a lot of parents like start that, a lot of children's book authors start that way. Like there's a child in their life that they have a special story for. I know that that's how I ended up getting pulled into this whole like crazy mess, was also writing stories for my own children. But I'm wondering how you went from making one, like wanting to make sure that you had like a paperback of 1 or 2 or 3 of your own to developing a children's book course. That seems like that's like a big jump to me. Like where'd that come from?
Yeah, it was funny. It was definitely one of those things where I had no intention of doing that, even though the last company I'd come from, which was called ClickBank, it was all about digital products and courses and things like that. But I wasn't envisioning doing that at all, and especially not when I was writing and publishing the books. But after I started putting them out there, I would, you know, be getting my hair cut or going to the bank or something, and being like self-employed and having a hard time explaining what I do for a business. When people would ask me, oh, you know, are you working? And I'd say, yeah, I work for myself. And they say, what do you do? Finally, I just started saying I'm a children's author, just to have an easy answer. And because people would be like, wow, that's cool. And it was a lot easier than saying, I run an online marketing business and that sort of thing. So I started saying I'm a children's author, and I would always get these responses where people were like, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a children's book. You should teach people how to write, how you did it." And after about the 10th time of hearing that, I was like, you know what, I should teach people how to do this, because like I said, I mean, it took me probably 3 months of research and trial and error and all kinds of stuff to figure out how to put a book together and get all the resources I needed, and especially how to kind of get it out there and start marketing it and things like that. So it was really at that point that I was like, okay, I should put together a course about this and just share what I've learned about how to do those kind of things. It wasn't really that I'd seen some other courses that were very much like publish children's books and get rich, and I was like, I don't think that's all that realistic, and it's also not the style of books that I wanted to teach. Like, I wanted to teach people how to write stuff that they genuinely cared about, and just how to get their work out into the world, rather than trying to make money on Kindle or that sort of thing that was popular for a while. So yeah, that's kind of how I came about it. And then I also had to create all the content for the course, as well as doing the books and stuff.
So what's the is the course about particularly how to put it together, and then also a bit of how to sell it, or is it more like literally the bolts, nuts and bolts of literally creating the product?
It's mostly focused on how to get your book finished and out there. So really, I'm kind of intending it for people who aren't illustrators themselves. So there's a big section in the middle about how to find and hire illustrators, because I feel like that's one of the hardest things for people, and how to do it in a way that it doesn't break the bank, because most people don't have thousands of dollars to invest in putting their book together and putting it out there. So it was like how to find illustrators, maybe in different parts of the world where they're really talented, but they don't charge, a ton of money to do it. And then how to format the book, get it up on Kindle, put it on CreateSpace so you can get paperback versions. But then kind of the final piece of the course is really how to launch it. So how to get it out there and start getting reviews and downloads, and sort of explaining how the Kindle marketplace works, on how do you get ranked in different categories, and what kind of categories and keywords should you choose to get noticed, and things like that. So there's a marketing aspect, but it's really kind of geared towards initially getting your book up there. It doesn't really talk about like long ongoing kind of marketing over years. It's more like the first month or so after you publish it.
Yeah, but that's hugely, that's amazing. I wish I'd had that when I started, because like you said, I had to learn it the really long way, and it probably took me 6 months, maybe not 3 like it took you. So because it's a whole different world, Kindle, the whole Kindle landscape and the categories and the keywords. I remember thinking, oh my God, what is all that? Probably didn't give it as much importance as I should have in the beginning if I'd positioned them better. So your own personal journey of creating your books, where are you at with it? Like, did you find that it was that you did have a level of success with children's books? Because I know you haven't written any in a while. Did you reach a point where you went, there really is no money to be made in children's books? Just genuinely, because it is other authors that are listening, watching this podcast, and people are going to make different decisions at different points.
Sure. No, I think that's a great question, and a really fair question. Honestly, one of the things that really led me to want to do the course was the third book that I published. It was actually the fourth one that I wrote, but the very first book I wrote took me the longest to publish, ironically. So so it was the third one I wrote, but it was right around Christmas time, or kind of the end of November. And I had an idea for this Christmas book called Christmas on the Farm. And it's just a simple rhyming book about the animals celebrating Christmas and getting into the spirit of it, and sharing, and generosity and things like that. And I wrote it again, kind of, over a couple of days, and was like, boy, I'd love to get this out there, but it's the end of November. I don't know how possible it is. And I ended up working with my illustrator that I'd worked with on an earlier book, and she was able to turn it around really quickly. And I think from when I started writing it to when it was live on Kindle took 8 days. And and it ended up becoming like a kind of a bestseller in its category, and was my best-selling book I've ever had, which is kind of funny that it was the fastest. So, I my course I ended up creating was called 6 Weeks to Your First Children's Book, because I was like, okay, 8 days is not reasonable for most people, but somewhere in the middle, like I think 6 weeks is very doable. Some people will probably take 2 or 3 months, but with that, I definitely had kind of hit a groove of having other books out there where I was able to do promotions of those that helped boost sales of the Christmas book, and then learning what I'd learned about marketing up to that point. When I put that book out there, and with the seasonality and that sort of thing, it really did sell quite well. It wasn't life-changing money necessarily, but it was a nice side income and definitely helped. And it was something where it was enjoyable and fun, and something that, like, if somebody wanted to repeat that process, they definitely could do it. So, sorry, that was a long answer to your question, but to kind of come back to it, I hadn't written any in a while, but it's not because of the money issue or that sort of thing. I just sort of, I don't know, I think I kind of tapped my creative well a little bit or something. I have a couple of books that are close to being done, and I'm going to try to get them published this year, just because it's been a while and I really want to get back into it because I love that world. I don't, personally, I don't think that unless someone really loves the marketing side of it and is willing to put a lot of ongoing effort into the marketing side, it is going to be challenging to really make a significant amount of money from their books, unless they just happen to have a sort of a viral hit and really tap, like, the zeitgeist or something, and the book takes off. But otherwise, I do think it's totally possible to make good money with children's books if you're willing to stick to a promotional schedule and kind of have a real marketing plan for growing and getting more readers, getting subscribers to your email list so that you can notify them when new books come out, doing cross promotions from your other books, actively going out and getting reviews, especially from like top Amazon reviewers and things like that. So there's a lot that you can do to really increase sales and treat it more like a business. And that's the tough thing, is that a lot of authors don't want to treat it like a business, which is fair. But if they don't want to treat it like that, then they can't expect to make the kind of money you would make from a business. So that stuff is possible. You've just got to be willing to put in the work on those sorts of things, like the marketing and sales aspect of it.
Yeah. So I want to point out a couple of things that you just said that really resonated for me. So one of them is the positivity of what it is that you just said. I feel like a lot of times I'm only hearing people naysay, like saying, oh, it's impossible, I'm going back to thrillers or whatever they think is going to make them a ton of money. And so that's part of it. And then totally connected to that is everything you said is slow and steady. It's slow growth. It's slow marketing. It's not like, boom, out of the gate, you sold 50,000 copies in your first month. And, now it sounds like a slow and steady approach, which seems true to me, maybe particularly in this market, or maybe just because I'm that kind of person. I don't know, but it really came out for me. So, yeah.
I think one thing on that point of sort of selling in the children's book market versus other popular self-publishing markets like thrillers or that sort of thing. One thing that I kind of thought about as soon as I decided to publish more than kind of my first book and started thinking about, well, how could I sell more copies, was the realization that even though we're writing for children and creating these books for children, at the end of the day, especially on Kindle, the person buying the book is the parent. So you've got to keep the parents in mind when you're marketing your book. So that might be in the Kindle description, or the title, or that sort of thing. That you want to create something where it's going to strike a balance between the children being excited by the picture and the cover and wanting to read it and that sort of thing, not being bored by it, but also parents looking at it and being like, okay, that's something that I'd like my kids to read. Or like, with my books, I was like kind of solving my own problems I was having as a parent of my kid who won't sleep, my daughter who was waking up grumpy in the morning, and that's why I wrote the Morning Grumblies, was about how to deal with waking up grumpy and try to have a good day despite that. And with Natasha the Ninja Princess, I wrote it because I wanted my daughter to have a powerful, smart female character to look up to. That because she loved princesses, but I wanted a princess that wasn't just there to wear fancy dresses and stuff. I wanted one that was cool and exciting. And so, I think keeping parents in mind when you're putting your books together and marketing them is kind of key to making sales, because at the end of the day, they're the one with the credit card that's actually going to choose whether to buy the book and pick it up for their kids or not.
Yeah. So I can see that in action in some of your titles, including The Morning Grumblies, which has an embedded subtitle. All of your books have embedded subtitles, but the embedded subtitle, a book about waking up grumpy, is the part that is telling a parent that this is meeting a need that the parent has.
Yep, exactly right. Yep.
You have a need, I can fill that need. And that is like your internet marketing hat on, right? So like, what other things can you tell us from your internet marketing hat that might help us out like that tip does?
Yeah, well, I think some of the things are writing a really compelling description of your book. Some people, when they approach the description, they either just do it as a straight up summary of what the book's about or that kind of thing. And again, you're really wanting to make it compelling of like, why is the kid going to enjoy this book and beg to read it again and again? Why is the parent, why would they want to invest in this book? Like, what are they going to get out of it, or what's their child going to get out of it? So really, using your description and potentially even your title or subtitle as a selling point instead of just a placeholder or a summary. Another one that I think can be useful is choosing your categories. What I've always liked to do, and I think it works pretty well, is to put yourself into kind of a broader category. So, it might be like the children's book / animals category, where there are going to be tons of books in that category, so it's pretty competitive. And then for your second category you get with Kindle would be putting it in something that's more niche and specific and doesn't have as much popularity, but you can potentially become a bestseller in that smaller category. And then as people pick up your book, it can help increase your ranking in the broader, more competitive category.
So there's just some genius. Like that. So wait, hold on, wait. I want to make sure that I got that part right. So you're saying to pick like a super obscure category that it doesn't, like maybe there's only 12 books in that category. It doesn't matter, right? Because then you can be number one in that category, and then you can have one of those little orange tags right. that says bestseller on your book cover, even in the other category. That's,
I mean, if being, if kind of
smart.
Having the bestseller ranking or calling yourself a bestseller is important to you, and a lot of people like it, and it is compelling, to be able to put that in your book description, or if you're talking to publishers or putting yourself out there, positioning yourself, as a popular children's author, like if you were trying to speak or do a book signing or something like that, then you can get into one of those less competitive categories. And yeah, if you do a big promotional push or something, it can be pretty easy to get yourself, officially be a bestseller in a category without cheating or that sort of thing. And so, yeah, you can do that sort of thing easier if you have one of your categories be less competitive than the other one. But the competitive ones are good Two, if you're doing the marketing stuff, because those are going to be more likely where people are going and actively looking for books and looking for new authors and that sort of thing. So it's good to do both.
Mm-hmm. All right, very cool. And then you also said the thing about the description, which also rings very true for me, because the first book in my Jade and Toussaint series, when it was still an even more baby series than it is now, it was selling like no copies at all, really, or like it was selling, like a copy like every third day or something like that. And I was trying to figure out how to get it to move faster. And someone in your Facebook mastermind group, which we'll come back to in a minute, but someone in your Facebook mastermind group happened to see my Amazon page, or maybe he was, I don't know, like background low-key searching me or whatever, and he just popped in and he was like, your product description is pretty terrible, you might want to look at that because the book looks really cute. I was like, okay, thank you, and I tried to dust off my hurt feelings because I didn't think my product description was terrible. And then I went in and did more research about that, and ended up landing on like Brian Cohen stuff with his product description formula and stuff like that, and using that. But it totally worked. And I don't know that it's necessarily Brian's formula in particular, or just that it's like a stronger product description, but like that started moving copies of that book. And so I'm much more cognizant of it now. Like, do you have tips about that product description thing? Or like, if not Brian, like where else can people look to get ideas for good product descriptions?
Well, I mean, I would say kind of the key things to think about are, first, what I was saying a minute ago about kind of the viewing it through a kind of a sales lens of like, if I was a parent coming across this book and I'm reading the description, is it going to hook me in and sound like compelling and exciting? Is it going to be something where I'll be, I'll feel good about sharing it with my kid? Like, I apologize if either of you guys do these kind of books, but like I see the fart books all the time for sale on Kindle, and it drives me crazy. I'm like, I don't want to share those with my kids. I'm sure they would enjoy them, but like that's not what I want to be, giving to my kids. Like some people do, and that's totally fine. But just for each parent, like, is this something where they're going to be excited to share it with their kids? And then I think the other thing to think about would be keywords. People are searching on Kindle for books on particular topics. And so especially if your book kind of has a specific angle, or, for example, this is just off the top of my head, but like if you were writing a book for kids with autism, or about kids with autism, making sure that you're kind of putting those sorts of keywords regularly throughout your description or maybe your subtitle. And you don't want to be spammy about it. It needs to read naturally. But a lot of people, will title their book in a way that that's not obvious, which is totally fine. But then they don't necessarily come around to really saying what it's about, or who it would appeal to in the description. And so you want to make sure you include those kinds of things in there so that it will turn up in a search if somebody's looking for it.
Yeah, because like we tend to think of children's books as like one big broad sort of genre, but actually there's like themes, there's like little genre pockets and niche as the Americans say it, areas, and that's I think the more we get that actual subtopic nailed, the better. Speaking of autism, I get a lot of emails from parents that say, we love your Meditation Adventures for Kids series for my autistic child. And so I put that as a keyword, and now I get, we heard that your books are the go-to books, and I'm like, are they? They're not, like, they don't speak about anything like that. I mean, really, they're for all kids because all kids are anxious, but somehow they're niching into that sort of subcategory. So it's an interesting example. And even if it's middle grade books, looking for those themes, because every book has a theme to it. Yep. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Great suggestion.
Absolutely. Okay, so you were going to say something, Beau, and I cut you off.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, so I would love for us to go into the mastermind group that you started on Facebook, and a little bit here. So how did that end up coming about? Like, what made you start that Facebook group?
Yeah, I kind of did it with sort of a dual purpose in mind. I had just created the blog and podcast, the Let's Make Kids Books blog and podcast that I was doing for a while, and I think I was in the process of creating my course, and I wanted a place where I could interact with people that were reading the blog or listening to the podcast, and then eventually I knew that I wanted it to be sort of a support group for people who had bought my course and wanted to interact with other people that were going through kind of the same process of trying to get their books published and that sort of thing. And the reason why I did a Facebook group instead of like a forum or something like that is because people are already on Facebook. They don't, most people don't want another site to go to and to have to remember to check and log into and stuff. So I found Facebook to be a really good place where pretty much, everybody that I was interacting with was on it, which is very handy. And it could kind of just fit into their normal browsing and social media time. And it wasn't something where I had to hope that people would go and post stuff and end up with kind of, crickets in a forum, as often happens. So yeah, those were the main reasons I want to start it. It was a great place for me to learn from other people who were doing it, to be able to ask questions, come up with content ideas. There were a lot of good things that I've gotten out of it. I could definitely, talk more about some of those things if that's what you want to talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm very interested in it because I feel like there are a lot of things out there for authors in general, but not a whole lot of things out there for children's book authors that are meant to be an exchange of ideas. I keep coming across Facebook pages where people just kind of like post like, oh, my book is on sale, or oh, my book is 99 cents or whatever, which is cool. Like there needs to be that so that people, but being able to actually exchange ideas and think of it as a business is not something that I come across a whole lot anywhere really, but including on Facebook. So I would, if people were seeking something out in a group like that, like how would you, like what would you tell them to look for if they wanted to start something like that? Where would you tell them to begin?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I tried to do, and part of it was just because of my my audience and what I was trying to teach and what I was doing myself was I wanted to focus on indie children's authors or self-published, however you want to say it, because I didn't find anything out there. Like I looked around at other groups and I didn't find anything except for those promotional groups like you were talking about. And looking at those, they'd have 10,000 members, and you go into the group and it's just a bunch of people spamming their deal, like you said, and no one commenting, no one liking. I ran some tests of my own where I had tracking links where I could see how many people clicked on links, and I would go and post my deals in a bunch of those groups, and I'd put it in 20 or 30 kind of promotional groups like that and get 15 clicks or something. So compared to some of the other marketing stuff I was doing, I was like, these kind of spammy groups where there's no real interaction, there's no discussion, people aren't helping each other. So right out of the gate, and this is something I would recommend for somebody who's wanting to start their own group, is to really think about what you want to get out of the group and what rules and guidelines you need to put in place to make that happen. So kind of right out of the gate, I said, this is not another promotional group. If you want to promote your stuff, you need to be in here contributing and helping people and giving back before you're asking people to do stuff for you. And so it's worked out really well because I feel like when people in the group now do post their stuff, there's such a good community around it that people are actually supportive and excited, and they do like and comment and download each other's stuff, and it's not not just a spam fest. So that's part of it. I would say one of the things, going back to what I said about creating something that I couldn't find, was that process of finding a niche and going a little bit deeper than what else is out there, because that's going to let you, even if you don't grow as big as some other groups, you'll have a more engaged community. People will really feel like they've found a tribe and that it's their people and they're excited to hang out there and contribute there. So trying to specialize a little bit and putting a particular hook or spin on it is really helpful. And then I think if you're going to run the group, you've got to be really engaged, especially early on, about making sure that there's new stuff in there, that you're contributing and replying to people's comments, and really trying to get people to interact. Because if someone joins a group and then doesn't, there's nothing in there for them, they don't take action very quickly, Facebook is going to stop showing posts from that group to them pretty quickly. So you got to try to find ways to get people engaged, whether it's welcoming them by name and tagging them, or asking them to share their stuff so that other people can see it and comment on it, and just doing things like that, creating content, maybe posting a video or answering people's questions in like a Q&A kind of format or that sort of thing. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to kind of keep the engagement high. But you definitely want to do that, especially early on, because early in the history of the group, there's not going to be a lot of people in there posting stuff and interacting. And so once it grows past a certain point, it kind of takes on a life of its own and will maintain itself a little bit better. But in the early days, you've got to really be the driver of that activity.
So is that where your podcast came in, Beau? Were you trying to drive content toward that Facebook group?
That was part of it. I kind of always viewed the Facebook group as like having kind of a symbiotic relationship with all the other stuff. Like all of the kind of content things I was doing, the blog, the podcast, and the group, were all kind of meant to promote each other. And so I would make sure to mention all the other stuff in each one, just so that people could find it and kind of consume the content or engage like how they felt most comfortable. Some people just like to listen to the podcast and didn't really want to get in and discuss stuff, but I've run across a lot of people who, like, as soon as they hear about the group, get in there and are really excited and posting a ton of stuff and really active, and that's awesome. So and then once I did launch my course, one of the first things I would say is, welcome to the course. First thing you should do is go join the Facebook group so that you can ask questions and talk to other people who are doing this and see that you're not alone. Because, the course has a lot of good content in it, but it's also sort of just me talking to them. It's not a two-way street. And so it's been cool having that as a resource for students, because I think they feel a lot more supported and see that other people have the same questions that they have, or feel like, oh, I'm never going to get this done, and then other people encourage them and that kind of thing. So
I can see how. Sorry, Marti.
No, you go for it.
I haven't said sorry, Marti, in a few podcasts, so it had to come in. Thank you. I just wanted to know, how like it makes amazing sense, all those pieces of the puzzle and how they work, like you said, together to get something known and people engaged and feeling part of the community. I wonder, as you were talking the whole time, I was thinking, I wonder if that would work from the perspective of an author, that might have books that are a brand, like one of my series is a bit of a brand. I wonder if that same concept, I don't know, I haven't tested it, might work for, parents, and so that they feel that it's not just they read a book, they put it down and move on to something else, but feel part of that community. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's a really powerful thing that authors can do, especially if you have an area like you were talking about where you kind of have an area of focus or a group of parents or children that you're writing for. yeah, creating a resource for people, especially in like a Facebook group format or even a newsletter or something like that, where you can, instead of just saying like, join my author list and I'll email you whenever I have a new book, you could say, I've created a Facebook group for parents of autistic children, or whatever it might be, parents of shy children, or sort of, you could pick a topic, but basically when you create that group and own it, then you get to position yourself as a trusted resource in that area, which is really cool. And most people don't ever do that, and so they're kind of missing out on that opportunity to have a captive audience who looks up to you and trusts you and wants to hear what you have to say, so that when you do then release a book, you've got a huge group of supporters behind you who are excited to read it. If you combine, the Facebook groups are great and they can be really powerful. I also would definitely recommend trying to create an email newsletter and subscriber lists, just because people still check their email all the time, and like the amount of people that see an email from you is going to be a lot higher than people that see social media posts and that sort of thing, just because of the nature of how busy social media is. So, if you create that group, you could then create a resource for parents or for other people in that area of interest, and say, hey, here's a checklist I created, or a free resource, or a video, or something. Just download it here, and you just get their email address, and then you can have that email list. And then whenever you do launch a new book or run a sales promotion or whatever it might be, then it's going out to an audience of people who are already familiar with you and know, like, and trust you. And then that has a huge impact on sales, as opposed to trying to market the book to what they call cold traffic, where people that don't know you, or that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it also just creates a lot of opportunities outside of just making book sales, but doing book signings, or getting speaking gigs, or even if you had a big following in a particular niche, or with a particular set of parents, that would make it a lot more popular, or a lot more likely, if you did want to go to a traditional publisher and say, I have a great idea for a book and I've already got a big following and a group of 1,000 people that listen to me, their ears are really going to perk up and be excited about working with you, because you're bringing something to the table.
Okay, very cool. That actually is like a lot of the answer to the question that I was going to ask before, which is like, what are the ongoing benefits of managing a group like this? Because we all have 1,000 things that we're supposed to be doing. I have a list right here, like hanging, and make the sound of the paper with the list of all the things that I haven't quite gotten to yet, on the things that are, marketing things. And so there has to be some benefit for you, since you've kept it up for so long, right? Like that you have to be getting a lot out of it, but it sounds like you're getting a ton out of it, right? Like, or have a group of people who are have you've been able to kind of position yourself as a trusted voice for them, and additionally, like you said, that you got a lot out of it from being able to have your own questions answered over time. And are there other pieces of that I'm missing? Like, what are the benefits of being the person who manages something like that?
I mean, I think there are a lot. I can't overstate how valuable it is to be able to learn from people while you're also teaching them. Like, whenever I run into a problem, or I have someone ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, I'll say, oh, I got this other group member who's really good at that, so you should ask them. And I just tag them, and it makes that person feel good, and it makes me look good because I know who to point them to, instead of just saying, I don't know, let me Google that for you. So that's really cool. I think it's really interesting, but so few people are willing to kind of step up and own something like you guys are doing with this podcast, where as soon as you put yourself out there and say, this is my group and I want to talk about this, it just immediately sort of raises people's people's notion of how much you know about a subject, or you kind of become almost like an immediate expert, even if you're not, which some people use that for evil instead of good. But if your heart's in the right place and you genuinely want to help people on that subject, and it's a subject you're interested in, just saying like, I have this group, opens up a lot of opportunities and a lot of interest. Like when I have done podcasts in the past, I get people reaching out to me asking to be a guest on the show and that sort of thing, and it's just cool. It's like, wow, I feel like I barely know what I'm talking about, but it's cool that other people think I do and want to talk to me about this. So, I think there's definitely like some great positioning stuff and opportunities that get opened up that you otherwise don't get if you don't have kind of that following and that asset that you've built. And for me as an author, when I was publishing books or launching a new book or running a promotion or that sort of thing, it was great to be the sort of the leader of the group, because everybody knows who you are. So when you post your book and say, here's my new book, check it out, like everyone in the group is familiar with you, and so you get even more sort of promotion out of it than other group members would, which is cool. So that's definitely, it's a lot of work. One thing I recommend is like kind of batching the work, not necessarily going in and responding to every single comment the second it happens, but taking 20 minutes, out of your day, or doing 2 20-minute segments or something like that, and going through the whole group and replying to everything or commenting on everything that needs it, and just kind of fitting it into your day rather than letting it constantly distract you and become a huge source of stress. So yeah.
So
were you going to say
our internet connection must not be that great today, because
I think we just both have a lot of questions.
so I actually came on to be the timekeeper, because we said that we were going to keep Beau for shorter than we have kept some of our other guests. So sorry, I was coming on to say that we have only a few minutes left. So, but you can go with your actual question.
Yeah, you know me, I make the rules and then I break the rules. I like, my ears just went pop pop when both of you kept using the word positioning. It's sort of it's a key thing that I'm looking at the moment in my non-fiction world, and I feel like it's a topic I'd like you to speak to a little bit, Beau, given your extensive experience in this industry, not just the kids' books, but just the whole online experience, because it's like I've learned too late that if I had positioned myself better at the beginning, that I would have like taken off a lot quicker, and also in my non-fiction world charged more, because I sort of, like most people, started and went, here I am, and now I want to move to charging more, but I have to reposition myself. And so can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it can be challenging for authors, and especially children's authors, to kind of figure out what they want to be when they're first starting out. I know I did. I mean, I was just writing books for fun and on a bunch of different topics and that sort of thing, and I quickly noticed, like, okay, the self-published authors who seem to be doing really well, and even a lot of the traditionally published children's authors who are doing really well, they sort of had their thing. Like they write a certain style of book, like say like the if you give a mouse a cookie kind of books. Like,
yeah, there's
I'm
like
sure
8 of them now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure after the first like 2 or 3, the author was like, oh God, I don't want to write another one of these. But hey, they
give a pick a pancake.
Yeah, people love them, and kids love them, and so you can't fault it. But I do think, like, if there's something you feel really strongly about, or that you're writing for an audience, to kind of own that right out of the gate and say, I'm writing books to support children with autism because I believe these things, and here's who I am, here's what I believe, here's my message and why I think the right people will resonate with this. And I think that's a really important point about positioning, that is, it's like very simplistic, but really, really hard for people to truly internalize, which is that you're not writing for everybody. You shouldn't write for everybody. You have to write for the people that are really going to connect with your stuff and really get you and get what you're trying to say. And you might turn some people off, or a lot of people will just be kind of indifferent to it and not get it, and that's okay. You don't need to write for everybody. You just need to write for people that are going to really connect with you and your message. And the same is true for nonfiction and really for any type of business you're creating. Like, you got to really think about, if I had to choose a small group of people to just absolutely love everything I do and buy everything I put out there, who would it be? And how should I communicate with them? And what do they really care about, so that I can make sure that, I'm putting it out there to the right people, instead of trying to get a mass appeal or, write stuff I don't really feel passionate about just because I think it'll sell better, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Great.
That sounds like huge for me, because I do hear that all the time, particularly I feel like with children's and middle grade writers, where they're saying, oh, but my book is for everyone. It's for everyone. And it very well may be true that like 85, 90% of people who read your book would enjoy it, but it's probably not for everyone. And it might be easier to find the people that you're talking to if you stop trying to be so universal with everything. I think the part of that that's hard for me is the idea of like possibly offending people, which seems scary, but yeah, you were about to jump in with wisdom.
I was just going to say, I mean, not everybody likes Harry Potter, which seems crazy to me because I love Harry Potter. But like, when you think about, even with the huge number of copies that it's sold, how many, what percentage of the world is that actually? Like, it's probably a tiny percentage. I have no idea what it is, but I'd be surprised if more than 5 or 10% of everyone out there had actually read Harry Potter. So you can be hugely successful, or even, even easier, moderately successful, if you can just capture the right market. There are a lot of people that I'm sure look at Harry Potter and are like, oh, that's for nerds, or I don't like wizards and that kind of thing, so I'm not going to read this. But she's still massively successful. So, I think it's really easy to be afraid of people not liking your stuff, or like you said, making people mad. But if you make people mad, that's actually kind of a good thing, because it means you have something important to say, and that the people who believe the same way as you do will really resonate with it and be like, yeah, that's totally what I believe too. I mean, you don't want to be offensive just to be offensive, but like, if you strongly believe something, and you put it out there, the people who agree with you are going to feel really strongly about it too, and want to support you and support what you're saying and doing. So, I'd say don't be afraid to make some people mad, because that's a sign that you're actually putting something out there that people are reacting to, instead of just being bored by, or it's just another Me Too kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So since you're giving the sage advice and Elena is sagely nodding, because she's way more experienced with this than I am. She's like, yes, he knows what he's talking about. All this.
Does that come across in the podcast?
I can see it. I can see it on your face. So, we are I feel like that's probably the best place for us to stop, where like there's just sage wisdom floating through the podcast right there. So, where is it that people should best find you online, Beau?
I would probably say, just, since people listening to this are obviously mostly here for the children's book stuff, to just check out my website, letsmakekidsbooks.com. It's got links to my podcast and my course and things like that, as well as to the Facebook group we've been talking about, if people are interested in that. My kind of personal / business website is at beaublackwell.com. Beau is with B-E-A-U, since I always have to spell it. And that's more like my kind of my advertising business that I run. But yeah, Let's Make Kids Books would probably be the best place for people to check that out.
All right, that's great. And we will put those in the show notes. And Elena, will you tell everyone where they should look for those show notes?
So it should be on your favorite bar by now, because
Obviously.
It's been enough weeks. IndieKidLitPodcast.com.
Right, excellent. And I think we even we have a fancy free email address that people can email us at as well. If you have questions or ideas for show topics, or if you have like a burning desire to actually be on our show, then you can email us at theindiekidlitpodcast@gmail.com. And thank you so much for joining us, Beau. It's been really nice to talk with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun, and it's been great talking to you guys too. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Beau.